It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Thank you for being with us on this Thursday edition of the show. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Great to have you all with us. A lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Four Nations Championship game. Talk about that coming up in 10 minutes. USA and Canada. Could it be better than the original? We'll talk about it. David Aardsma will swing by, our favorite former MLB reliever. Hangs out with us for a couple segments. Talk about some of the top stories going on around spring training. An interesting story from the WNBA that I want to touch on in this crazy offseason they've had. A story popped up on my radar on Tuesday night, and I didn't get to it yesterday. I want to talk about it a little bit today because I think it does a disservice to the women's game. I'll explain that coming up. Odds and ends, all of that fun stuff. But we say hello to Sammy Arnell for the first time on this Thursday and open things up in the NFL, where there's a lot of conversations surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers and what their quarterback situation is going to look like for 2025. And there's a couple of areas that I want to touch on here. One is the fact that now they're talking about Daniel Jones. They're kicking the tires on DJ. We often like to refer to, and I know it's your favorite thing to do, is talk about Kirk Cousins as the all-time bag getter. Not far behind with what he was able to do with the Giants in getting the bag was Daniel Jones, who got paid. I'm curious to get your thoughts, first of all, on the idea of the Steelers even thinking about Jones. Because now it starts to feel to me, Sam, like the Steelers are becoming almost like a fantasy football owner. Well, let's just try this guy. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try this guy. Let's try this guy. Doesn't matter if it fits or not. Doesn't matter if we have the pieces around him for him to be successful. Let's just try anything at this point. If it means getting a quarterback in here that can do something to enhance our chances.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that now we've fallen into a trend with the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Because this is exactly the same thing they did last offseason. And quite frankly, it feels, Jason, like this is the same thing they've been doing since they lost Ben Roethlisberger, which really sucks because it kind of makes you think that, well, yeah, Mike Tomlin is this incredibly successful coach, but how predicated was that success on him not having to worry about the most important position on the field for, 17 years? It's interesting in that regard. I do think that there are a couple of names that are just being completely written off, like Sam Darnold, I feel like would be a better fit than every name that they've mentioned. But the fact of the matter is they're still attached to Justin Fields in some sort of regard. And people aren't going to forget how good Justin Fields was at the beginning of last year before they gave that ball over to Russell Wilson. Quite frankly, I'm gonna be in the camp of I think the right answer for them is already in that locker room. I think that they should just give the ball to Justin Fields. You saw him have success to a certain degree last year. Yeah. Let's see if we can replicate it again this year. We don't need to go out and add another minimum contract on a guy who's just as much of a gamble as Justin Fields is.
It's amazing that Justin Fields just continues to get overlooked. We've still never seen what this guy could do with a full season when healthy, good pieces around him, good coaching around him. It boggles my mind that they're just going to skip past that option, it feels like to me, and go to the next quarterback or the next shiny object in the room. I'm not so sure on Sam Darnold because, Kevin O'Connell and Justin Jefferson and some of the other pieces that he has up there in Minnesota allowed for him to be successful. And even then, when we got to the end of the season, we kind of saw what Sam Darnold was in that last regular season game against Detroit and then in the playoffs. So I'm not so necessarily sure that even Sam Darnold would be the option that I would go to ahead of Daniel Jones. But to me, Justin Fields, I agree with you. And I'm not saying that as if I'm shocked because we do sometimes agree. But Justin Fields, to me, does feel like the guy that they should go into camp and say, he's going to be our number one quarterback. We're going to give him an opportunity. We know what Russell Wilson is. While he's still average to slightly better than average, we know we're not winning a Super Bowl with him. So let's give Justin Fields an opportunity. And either Russell Wilson, you choose to accept that and support that, or we move on.
Yeah, the interesting stipulation here is that Justin Fields is now going into his 5th year. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure contractually because he was a first round quarterback that got traded. I don't know if that 5th year option still applies with the Steelers. Regardless, you don't have to pay the guy QB1 money,
No.
whether it's with his 5th year option or if he is a free agent, you bring him back on a cheaper deal. This is not a guy that is going to warrant, $15 million a year. I don't even think he'll be close to that. You're going to be paying him a very small amount of money in an offense where we saw him have success last season. Granted, I know there are a lot of questions.
I mean, he's a free agent. There is no 5th-year option for him. It's just going to be he's just going to basically be a free agent.
Yeah, so it gets voided out when you trade that's interesting that it gets voided out upon trading a first round quarterback within their rookie contract. Regardless, though, there are more questions to me around the offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith than there are around the quarterback position. Because Arthur Smith, quite frankly, has done nothing but show you that he is not good at alternating quarterbacks or making an offense that is easily acceptable to multiple different quarterbacks.
Here's the question. And I know talking about hot seats for NFL head coaches in February is just bizarre. But he's kind of a special case because he's been there so long, legacy head coach, couple of Super Bowl titles. They go 9-8 again. Barely get into the playoffs. But hey, it's another season over 500. It's another trip to the playoffs. Is Mike Tomlin the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers this time next year? I think the answer is no. You think so? You think yes?
This is a franchise, Jason, that has had 3 coaches since the Nixon administration.
But the screams might get too loud at that point if it's another one of those types of seasons. Fairly or unfairly, by the way. And I think in some cases it's unfair because you look at what they've had since Ben Roethlisberger departed from that organization and departed from the game of football. I don't know. I get the sense this might be the last shot for him to not just make the playoffs, but make some sort of run that sort of keeps the vultures at bay.
This is a thing that we do every offseason.
Yeah.
And every offseason we come back to the same conclusion, which is that, quite frankly, the ownership group up in Pittsburgh, the Rooney family, they're not ready to move on from Mike Tomlin.
Time will tell. We have a whole year to figure it out. Good conversation on the Steelers. All right, we're coming back. We got more to do on the show. 4 Nations championship game, Boston, USA and Canada. We'll talk about it next. All right, segment 2 on the show. Second day in a row we talked hockey in segment 2. Something like that. Let's bring in our friend Sam Yarnell, who returns. Coming up in 10 minutes, David Aardsma will join us. Some baseball to talk about while you're all digging out of snow and ice up in the north. Are you dealing with that snow and ice up there? No?
It's
you don't
cold,
have any of that?
but the skies are sunny.
Yeah, see, my parents are in Connecticut, and they're just buried under snow and ice and all that fun stuff. Don't miss that. Not gonna lie, I don't miss that. I'll be in Palm Springs, California. Hey, if you want to catch me this weekend, I'll be in Palm Springs. Yeah, and it's gonna be 80 degrees in Palm Springs this weekend. Yeah. Ain't nobody feeling sorry for me having to make that trip. I'm actually going for a bowling tournament, though. I should mention. So we're gonna go and bowl this weekend. 9 games. Hopefully my knees can handle it. So, speaking of snow, if you think of snow, you think of hockey. If you think of hockey, you think right now of the 4 Nations championship game, which will be taking place on Thursday night. USA and Canada. Can the sequel? Rarely in life, rarely in show business is the sequel better than the original. Some might argue Godfather 2. Some might argue Rocky 2. But at the end of the day, rarely does the sequel match the original. This one, I'm not so sure. This one might actually exceed what we saw in the original. with the USA and Canada meeting up in the Four Nations Championship game in Boston. Obviously, no love loss. And even though, a lot of these guys, some of them play on the same teams together in some cases. Canada and the USA is an even money game, basically. Both of them going off at minus 110 for that championship game tonight. And look, I talked about it with Dennis Bernstein on the show yesterday. I think yesterday. Maybe it was the day before. I'm losing track of the days.
Tuesday. It was Tuesday. We didn't have a show yesterday,
right,
Jason.
Right. It was Tuesday. Well, I did half a show yesterday. So he and I were talking about it, and I think it comes. I hate to make it sound again so simplistic, but when you're as simple-minded as me, you do that. Connor Hellebuyck is going to be the key in this game to me. He's going to have to. He kind of if you go back and look at that first game, outside of the Bedard goal or Connor McDavid opening goal for Canada in that game where he was going 100 miles an hour on a breakaway. Outside of that, he stood on his head. He was fantastic in that game. Canada had its opportunities. And they're going to need Hellebuyck, especially when you're talking about some of the injuries here that Team USA is facing. They're going to need him to stand on his head again. And if he plays at that level, I think USA finds a way to win again.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Gosh. There's so many storylines like deep inside hockey leading into this game, obviously, besides the fact that it's a rematch. You got all these injuries on the Team USA side. That's what has brought the money down to pick them either way. Yeah. It did open with the US as like a 25-cent favorite.
Small, yeah.
But a couple of things here. Obviously, you got the McAvoy injury. There are some other injuries that could be lingering out of the Team USA camp that we don't know about. Obviously, by the time this show is airing, I'm sure you will know about them. Tage Thompson did join Team USA in Boston, so that gives us a clue. Maybe there's a chance. But then there's this whole other thing going on with these injuries and the NHL. And the NHL obviously being the oversight for this tournament. Team USA had a couple of players go down. They wanted to replace them. They pitched the idea. Team Canada said, hey, we're fine with it. Those guys are injured, bring on whoever you need. And then the NHL was like, well, hold on a second. We don't know if this fits within the bylines of the tournament or the bylaws of the tournament, So we're going to have to wait and see if these players are going to be eligible. And as of Thursday morning, we are still waiting to find out if all of these players will be eligible for Team USA. So there is an off chance that they are at a massive disadvantage when this game starts, and your boy Connor Hellebuyck is going to have to be standing on his head about twice as much as you previously expected. Listen, goaltending is going to be the key to this game. Yeah. You are spot on with that, Jason Page. You're looking at one of the best power plays in the history of the sport when we're talking about that Canadian side. Can Connor Hellebuyck stand on his head again and hold them to a goal again? I don't know. It's way too close of a decision for me to put my money on either way. Well, I'll take the under 5.5, though. I do think this game is close.
I want to talk about that. And in Hellebuyck, you're talking about a guy that's probably going to win the Vezina. So I don't put anything past him. All right. We'll get back to the hockey in just a moment after a word from our friends over at Credit Associates. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high payments, and high interest rates that keep you in debt for decades with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. And that's going to save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Find out how much you could save right now. Call 1-800-747-5362. That's 1-800-747-5362 with our friends from Credit Associates, or just scan the QR code right there. I like the under in this game. Love the under in this game. I'm very much with you on that. As you were talking, that was the first thing that kind of stood out to me is right now, go get that under, and it's juiced to the under right now at minus 134. And then you've got your MVP choices, and Hellebuyck right now is the guy when you talk about that at plus 250, followed by Connor McDavid at plus 290, and then Sid the Kid at plus 490. I got to be honest. I know the price isn't great, but I kind of like Hellebuyck.
Yeah, it's not a great price. So I think
if you believe USA is going to win, if you believe the USA is going to win, it's probably going to be him.
Unless it's a 5-3 game.
Unless it's a shootout.
Unless they win a 5-3 game.
Yeah.
But yes, if you like the under and you like the USA, bet Connor Hellebuyck to win the MVP. That market's a little too volatile for me. I don't know if I'll take it. I probably will end up putting a shekel or two on Connor McDavid to score an anytime goal and Sidney Crosby to score an anytime goal, because the prices you've been able to get on those throughout this whole tournament have just been incredible. And I have profited a decent amount off that Connor McDavid number, especially when he scored the first goal in the first game against the U.S. It's going to be a barn burner, Jason Page. This game is going to come down to the very end. But, I think at the end of the day, I'll have a little bit of national pride, and let's go with the USA.
I wonder if the fans are going to boo the Canadian national anthem the way Canadian fans booed the U.S. national anthem.
Definitely. That barn is going to be shaking with those boos.
We'll all be watching. I wonder if David Aardsma is going to be watching. We'll ask him. He joins us next to talk some baseball. We proceed on this Thursday edition of Sports Wrap. It's time to talk some baseball. One of our favorite guests on the show, David Aardsma, former MLB reliever. Spent a decade in Major League Baseball. Figure we go around the league with him. It's as good a day as any. It's a day ending in Y. If I had it my way, David would be on every day.
Let's do it.
We can't afford him.
Baseball, all 24/7. Let's make the show baseball. Baseball tonight. That'll be a great name.
I've heard of. It's a great idea.
Yeah, does someone have the trademark on that?
Yeah, somebody maybe.
So I wanted to get your thoughts. We talked about earlier in the week this Alex Bregman. Rafael Devers situation. Devers saying, I'm the third baseman of this team. I'm staying at third. They went and spent $120 million for 3 years of Alex Bregman. We know what an upgrade he is at the position. How does this work itself out, David?
How this works itself out is Rafael Devers is probably going to get his way. That's how it's going to work itself out, to be honest. I think so. Here's the thing about it. I don't agree with Rafael Devers at all. I understand why you'd want to keep the position financially and you just, you want the position. When you got the new guy coming in who's totally cool with, hey, I'll play anything. I just want to help the team win. Everything. God, he's saying everything. Absolutely. And it's so frustrating that an Astro is saying everything perfect now, with the Red Sox and everything going on. So frustrating. But he's doing it perfect. And he's saying, hey, I'll play anything. I'll do whatever it is. The team has to figure out both personalities, and they know that going into it. And this is why you got to talk to Rafael Devers before you sign Alex Bregman. And before all that happens, I think we saw this in Houston land with Presley and Hader. Talk to the guy before you sign him. Who's going to take a position. But at the end of the day, Rafael Devers has led Major League Baseball in errors for the last 7 years, at third base. Come on, dude. At some point, there needs to be conversation saying, you're good, but you're not, showing how good you are here. This is not your position. Let's move you. Let's try something else to really show your position. But at the end of the day, Alex Bregman's going to end up moving. Maybe it ends up going back towards middle of the year. But right now, Devers third base, Bregman second base, or they'll figure out a place for him. It's crazy to think that.
I got to follow up with that, because it seems like the crux of this issue is in the change of general manager, right? We heard Alex Cora say, Heim's in St. Louis now, right? That was something potentially he said to Rafael Devers that may not hold up anymore. Have you ever been on a team that's gone through an upper management change like that? And if so, or if you've heard stories of it, kind of what does that entail for the players themselves?
This is when things get really frustrating. It was when you have, especially on a team like this, when you're putting in contracts like the one Rafael Devers has, right? And you probably have promises there and everything, but there might not have been a promise there either. You're just going to get paid a lot of money. At the end of the day, let's think about what would Brian Cashman do back in the old school 2000s Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman walked in there and said, Devers, come on, and said, your job is to play baseball, and it doesn't matter where. We get to tell you where. And that's the bigger problem, is that in a day and age of 2025, when we want to talk about every personality and everything, if you want to play for the team and get paid, just play. Just play wherever you are, wherever the job is. we think about some of the biggest personalities in baseball in history. Alex Rodriguez kind of jumps up there a little bit as far as like everything, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the dude changed positions because he wasn't as good and there was a better player there. Like the best, one of the Hall of Famers, right, sitting right there, and he goes, no problem. I'll go third base. Without even a second thought. And that dude was way better than Rafael Devers will ever be in his life. And so that's the problem, is like somebody's got to shake Devers a little bit and say, dude, get your head out of your butt. Realize that, like, be the guy everybody wants you to be. Just be a baseball player instead of I'm a third baseman. And that's the biggest problem. He is, I'm a third baseman. No, dude, you're a baseball player.
You're going to be a designated hitter, it sounds like.
At the end of the day, it'll end up being that. And that's something we all got to wake up to, man, and say, like, what is our best position for us? What's the best position for the team?
And what's unfortunate for him too, right, is that they're so stacked at first base. I mean, you've got Tristan Casas, who's going to be the first baseman for years, and that's the normal move, right? Just across the diamond to first. We've seen it for countless guys who were successful at third base. A team, though, in that division, David, that I'm curious to get your expectations for this year, because I feel like no one has really talked about them, is the Tampa Bay Rays. Obviously, the tumultuous offseason with their stadium and playing in the minor league park this year. What are you expecting, if anything, from Tampa Bay in a competitive division this year?
You know what's crazy is I think we've had this, like, we could have had this conversation anytime in the last like 10 years, and we still don't know where they're going to finish. They're going to be just fine. And like, they're winning the division. They're maybe second to last place or whatever it is. They're 80-82 last year. Have they gone out and really made any change? No. Have they ever really made a change? No. Outside of like someone, they're great players and they have to leave and they get a bunch of trade value for it. They're going to be just fine though. And the thing about it is they have arguably the best coaching staff in baseball. You got Snyder, and then you've got the manager. I'm dying now because like he was actually my catcher with yes, he was my catcher with Boston too. We were talking about Boston. They've got one of the best coaching staffs in baseball, one of the best front offices in baseball. Obviously, they've had so much change in that front office just over the years, and they just keep rolling because of it's a mindset, it's a culture in that front office. They're gonna be just fine. But again, they're middle of the road, because the problem is when you look at this and go, okay, the Blue Jays have gotten better. Definitely have gotten better. True. Still have a long ways to go. But then the Red Sox have notably gotten better. The Yankees have notably, I think, even stayed, if not, but gotten a little better. But they're a 94-win team. They're not just all of a sudden lose 10 games, 20 games. But the Rays really haven't moved. And the only team right now, I think it's like you got Toronto, and then you actually have Baltimore is going to take the step back. And that's the thing for me, is like, unless all their young guys for some reason start hitting really well, they lost offense. And that was where they needed it. They needed something more in the offense, and they lost offense. And so that's a little concern for me. But again, I think they're going to be second to last place, if not last place in the division, but still be 500.
We only got a minute left in the segment. I actually think Baltimore is going to be better than a lot of you guys think, because now that young talent is actually going to have another year of growth. I think you're sleeping on Baltimore. I think if you sleep on Baltimore, you do so at your own peril. And now they bring the fences back in from left field, if I'm not mistaken, too, right? Didn't they announce they were bringing them back in a little bit too?
Yes, they're bringing them back in. At the same time, though, that's not going to help. It's going to be a marginal improvement on the young guys. But again, they lost 42 home runs in right field. Like, you're not going to have this massive jump. Like, Gunner's not going to get better. Like, where does Gunner have to go to get better? Like, the dude's incredible. But like, even if Adley and all those guys marginally just go a little better, they're not going to pick up the 42 home runs or whatever it was, 44 home runs from Santander.
David Aardsma is hanging out with us. We got another segment of baseball chatter with him. One Major League Baseball player wanted his number when he went to a new team. Wait until you hear what he was willing to give up to get his old number. We'll tell you about that and a whole bunch more as Sports Wrap continues. So we continue on this Thursday with some baseball talk. Maybe it's getting warmer somewhere in America where you are. Although the central part of the nation here is like freezing cold right now. It was like -10 without the wind chill in North Dakota. It's insane.
No, thank you.
Nah. It's a reason I live on the West Coast. And it feels like it's been cold out here, and everybody tells me this isn't cold for Vegas. This is warm for Vegas in the winter. They're telling me I should expect like 130 this summer. I'm like, oh.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well,
that's no fun. But
where you
I'll be there right there with you.
You'll be right here. We'll enjoy it together. We'll find a nice air conditioned room and cuddle. All right, David Aardsma, the Vladimir Guerrero situation. Vladdy Jr. is not getting the contract he wants. He's not even getting the offer he wants, it seems, from the Blue Jays. And it looks like he's going to test free agency next year. The one thing I'll say is I think he's going to have a monster year, being that he's betting on himself. We see it all the time. Rarely do the guys with this kind of talent in this situation have a bad year in the walk year. One, where do you see him potentially landing? Any chance he winds up back in Toronto? And two, what is it about the Blue Jays? Do they not want to keep, these potential legacy players?
I think here's the biggest thing people aren't talking about is they've had 7 years to figure this out. I saw this kid in 2018 in Double-A, before Double-A in spring training. You're just watching him hit baseball. You're like, that's the future. Everybody knows this. If you watch one live BP against big league hitters and he's 18 years old, there's no question this guy was the future. They should have signed him at that moment and set up 10 years. They've been sitting on their hands for so long. I don't care what happens to Blue Jays at this point. That is 100% Blue Jays' fault, because the problem is 2 years ago, they could have had him for $200 million. 2 years ago, you could have had him maybe $200 million. 4 years ago, you would have had him for $100. Yeah. And now we're sitting here going, it's a 400.
Well, it's like what the Guardians did with Jose Ramirez. They went and locked him up early.
Absolutely. And they absolutely missed the boat on this. I don't know how they did. Lock the dude up so long ago that he should be a Blue Jay for life. They should have signed a 20-year, $200 million contract years ago. And it was so obvious, because even his bad years are good years, and his good years are great years, and his great years are holy. Watch out. So it's just so many problems with this. Again, it's tax. There's something maybe in the front office. Maybe he's just had so many years with the organization. He just wants to see. And I don't blame anybody for going to free agency, but I do blame the Blue Jays for not just putting a number 5 years ago that we would all go, oh my God, that's amazing. And now we'd be like, that might be the steal ever, the century. That's their fault.
I got a question for you, David, in a second, but I got to add something, because I was actually talking to someone who's covered the Blue Jays for 15 plus years about this when this story broke the other day. And he made a great point, and that was that, to your point, David, they could have extended him for $300 million even last season. Yes. Then there was that report that came out that they offered Shohei Ohtani $775 million, and that price tag went up another $100 million or whatever you want to say, because they showed that they have the money, and the board of governors or whoever it is at Rogers that has to approve everything, they're willing to do it. My question for you, David, I remember last week when you came on the show, I asked you what your favorite day of spring training was. This morning, we got news that Brett Beatty, the former number 22 for the New York Mets, gave up his number to Juan Soto. And in exchange, Soto got him a Chevy Tahoe, a brand new truck. Nice. Now, David, you wore 6 different numbers throughout your Major League Baseball career: 30, 32, 33, 35, 53, and 54. Did you ever have to, or were you ever asked to, give up your number? And in exchange, did you get anything for that?
So the one time I actually had to really legit give up my number, and I had nothing to do with it, I was with the Giants my rookie year, and I'd been going up and down with the Giants. And again, I was a first round draft pick the year before, and I'm in San Francisco, so it was a pretty big deal. I'm a reliever, so I'm less of a big deal. But I was in the minors, and we made a trade. I can't remember it was for Dodger. It was for somebody, it was an infielder, a veteran guy. And I come back to the big leagues, and all of a sudden I lost 33, and now I'm 54. And I kind of had a problem with that. Deep down, I'm okay with it, but at the time, I was like, now I look back and go, that's kind of BS, man. They just gave my number away, and I'm a rookie, and I'm the guy, type of thing. That's the only time, Leday, maybe it was for Leday. And, but that was the only time I ever really lost my number, and it mattered, because that was my rookie number. And then after that, I'm just fighting for jobs, man. Just give me a number. I don't care what it is. Just give me a number at that point. But once I got 53, that kind of became my thing.
If I go to a roulette wheel, I'm playing all those numbers, by the way, that Sam just rattled off. I'm going to play every single one of them. And I'm not
Half of them aren't even on the wheel.
I'm not. Yes, they are. Up to yes, most of them
53
are
and 54
not 53
aren't.
and 54, but
So really quick. Let's just call it for what it is. Like Sammy Arnell, you know what numbers are on the roulette wheel without even like thinking about it. Like you said that immediately. Maybe someone might have a gambling problem. It's a conversation we need to have.
Real quick, at this point in spring training, where are guys in terms of throwing, in terms of, sort of where their arms are at, if we're talking about pitchers?
It depends on how old you are and how what your contract is. That's really what it is. The younger guys, you're ready to go. You were ready to go 2 weeks ago. You are biting at. You are throwing 110 miles an hour. You've got everything you got. The solid veterans are in build-up phase, prep phase. They understand what the season starts April, whatever it is, first. That's where they're at. They're on a timeline. The younger guys, dude, they're fighting for jobs. They want to impress everybody. They're already day one.
David Aardsma, former big league reliever, friend of the program. Always appreciate it, my friend. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon.
Dude, as always, thank you.
We're coming back. More Sports Wrap, including a conversation on something to consider. Don't go anywhere. All right, Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. But first, something to consider, Sammy Arnell. This story popped up on my radar on Tuesday night. I wanted to talk about it yesterday, but we were only doing a half show yesterday, so I didn't want to shortchange it. Look, we live in a time where women's professional sports, women's sports in general, is sort of the toast of the town. Everybody's in love with the different stories surrounding female athletes, whether it's Caitlin Clark in the professional ranks, what we're seeing with some of the great collegiate women's basketball players, and the future there is so bright. But I saw this story Tuesday night, and it really kind of disappointed me. The story of Marina Mabrey. Now, this is kind of an offbeat story, unless you caught it when it was briefly up on the ESPN front page. The Connecticut Sun have a player, guard Marina Mabrey, who played for the team last year. She averaged 14.5 points a game, 4 assists. First player off the bench for the Connecticut Sun, who are still seeking their first WNBA title. They beat Caitlin Clark in the Fever in the opening round of the postseason. Well, Marina Mabrey wants to be traded. She asked for a trade earlier this month from the Connecticut Sun. And the Sun have not acquiesced. They have said, no, we're not going to trade Marina Mabrey. Now, that led Marina Mabrey's agent, Marcus Crenshaw, of the FAM agency, FAM, to fire back at the franchise's decision. Now, here's the statement that the agent provided to ESPN. I want to read this carefully. In this current age of women's empowerment and support of the players, the Connecticut Sun threatening to force Marina Mabrey to play for them after her trade request is mind-boggling. Why would anyone try to force someone to play on their team when they don't want to be there? It's counterproductive in a ton of ways, and everyone we have spoken to is perplexed about how they are handling Marina after trading away Hall of Fame caliber players. The coach parted ways. No free agents returned, and they're doing all they can to try and force Marina to stay when she clearly doesn't want to be there. It's, in the words of Sammy Arnell, interesting.
You want to talk about perplexed? I'm perplexed by that answer.
I'm perplexed by the statement. And to sit there and see, here's the thing. You've got people right now on women's empowerment. You have people on the need to support and pour more money into women's sports. This dude is doing a disservice to that movement. To use that in the context of this conversation, which is something that goes on every day in sports, male, female, professional, anything in the pro sports ranks, this is something that goes on all the time. Teams make changes. You sign a contract. You're under contract to play with that team. Maybe you don't make as much money as you would like, but that's just the contract, and that's sort of what goes with the territory. To sit there and say, in this day of women's empowerment, this has nothing to do with women's empowerment. They have to keep somebody talented on their team.
Thank you. Yeah, this is really, really bad because this is now weaponizing a good thing and trying to make it a bad thing.
Yes.
Horrible for the movement. And like you said, Jason, in a day and age where this kind of thing needs to be built up, this is a perfect way of tearing it down, of using it in a way that is completely not meant, in a completely different sense. And there's just an interesting thing I wanted to point to here because you started to allude to it, but there's a quote from inside the quote. The Connecticut Sun threatening to force Marina Mabrey to play for them.
Oh my God.
Threatening to force. I would choose to use the words asking her to fulfill her contractual duty because that is what they are doing. Like you said, you sign a contract that's literally the business of sports. If you didn't want to be a part of that business, then maybe you shouldn't have joined the WNBA to begin with. And oh, by the way, hugely underreported part of this story, this is the second time this year that Marina Mabrey has requested a trade from her current team. She was traded to the Connecticut Sun mid-season after requesting a trade off of the Chicago Sky. This is unbelievably frustrating that she and her agent have gone out and done the damage that they now have to the women's empowerment movement on the whole, because it is now a scab on what is a generally great thing.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think you're spot on here. I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. And Jen Rosati, who's the general manager of the Sun, who I've known for a long time, going back to her days playing in the ABL when the WNBA first launched. This was like 96 or 97. She said it best. She's like, we want to build around her. We're not like, but she doesn't want to be. But here's the reality. She doesn't want to be on a team that she knows is going to suck, even if she's the star of that sucky team. Some people don't want to be the star of a sucky team and know that they're probably going to be, the person that gets all the attention and all the focus for success or failure on that fledgling team. The Sun gave up a lot to get her, too. They sent a 2025 first-round pick, a 26 pick swap, and a couple of guards to Chicago in order to get Mabrey. And that's the other point that Rosati throws in. I just thought the agent, I look, an agent's job is to serve the best interests of your client. I don't think the agent did that in this situation. By the way, speaking of agents, see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going without an agent, going to negotiate his own deal, got rid of his agent.
The old Lamar Jackson.
Giving up. Ain't going to give up that 10 to 20% or whatever the agent gets. Odds and Ends wraps up the show next. Don't go anywhere. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Thursday. Reminder on Friday, Robert Littal makes his return. Black Sports Online founder and CEO. Our friend Tino Patino will drop by as well. NASCAR's in Atlanta this week. We'll get his insights on that race. Funny story about Robert Littal. He joins us every Friday on the show. Unless I completely forget about the segment, which I did last week. We had so much going on and so many different guests, I actually forgot about the segment. He texted me like an hour and a half after we were done taping the show, and he goes, hey, is everything okay? And I was like, oh my God, I forgot. Yep. We are on point. All right. Reminders. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. More and more people listening every day. Go and subscribe. It's on your favorite podcasting platform. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, you name it, we are on it. Without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Our friends from Credit Associates, they want to talk to you. In over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high interest payments, high payments in general. They keep you in debt for decades. There's one affordable low monthly payment that can help you. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months, and that'll save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. What could be better than that? Find out how much you could save. Call 1-800-747-5362, 1-800-747-5362 with our friends from Credit Associates, or just scan the QR code below. What not to do if you're going to rob some of the most high-profile athletes in sports. Hint, you don't want to take a picture of you with the goods you stole. Selfies gone bad. These are a few of the guys involved in a high-profile burglary ring that has victimized several prominent professional athletes. And Sam Yarnell, here they are with the stuff, posing. Hey, shirtless. What do you say? Now they're under arrest. It went from that to this for them. There's the mugshots. They don't look nearly as happy.
Yeah, it's interesting because when this whole story kind of broke in the middle of football season, it almost seemed like no one was ever going to catch these guys. And then Joe Burrow did an interview in I think it was Super Bowl week. I think it was on Radio Row. And he mentioned it in some capacity. And I think everyone had kind of forgotten about it. And here we are 2 weeks later and boom, the guys are caught. So yeah, great job, law enforcement or the government or whoever was working on this project. Kudos to you.
I agree. But they're saying the threat isn't over for athletes, that this isn't just the only one going on. There's still a lot of unsolved cases, and it's going to continue to be a problem.
I wonder why. I wonder if it's because we publicize the schedule of hundreds of different millionaires every single year, so these people know exactly when they're going to and not going to be home.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, if I had that much money, I'd pay someone to stay in my house while I was gone.
Hire better security and not your living girlfriend or whatever Joe Burrow is doing. Get somebody who actually has some teeth, or get a really good guard dog or a tiger. Get a tiger, I'm all about that.
Okay, Mike Tyson?
Yeah, get a tiger. Ain't nobody going to go into a house if they see a tiger in there, I can promise you.
Well, unless they're on a bachelor party trip in the middle of Las Vegas. That's a story for another time. They already did a movie about that.
Bobby Portis, odds and ends. Basically, the end of his regular season, a 25-game ban for performance-enhancing drugs. He claims he thought he was taking Toradol when he was taking something else called what? Tamarol or something like that? Is that
Tramadol.
The story? Tramadol.
It's a narcotic.
Mistake.
It's
Easy
commonly
mistake.
used.
Yeah.
So did a little digging, spoke with some sources, found out that all of this narrative being perpetuated by his agent, that there was a very common mix-up, and he thought he was taking Toradol, but someone handed him Tramadol. Yeah, apparently that's not really plausible. They're completely different. They're under completely different regulations, right? Tramadol, you need a narcotics prescription license to give to someone. Toradol, very similar to Advil or whatever. So I'm not really buying the whole Bobby Portis story. I kind of think that he knew what he was doing. Also, you can apparently feel very different when you take Tramadol than when you take Toradol. So I'm not really sure how good of Bobby Portis's chances are at this appeal that we can all assume that he'll be filing, considering the Bucks need him.
All this conversation has done is remind me I got to take my blood pressure medication this morning. I just forgot. I gotta pop my blood pressure pills. What do you want me to tell you?
And then go out on your front lawn and yell at a couple of clouds.
Well, if I had a front lawn. There were people actually in our pool yesterday. It was 67 degrees and people were in the pool. You can tell people are desperate for it to start getting warm here. Yeah, there were people in our pool. It wasn't like some drug-induced hallucination I was having. It was real. There were
there was no Aaron Rodgers by your side or anything.
No, there was no Aaron Rodgers by my side. I wonder what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. By the way, congratulations, Aaron Boone. Contract extension. What do you got? Is that what you said?
Yeah, 2 years. Enjoy that, Jason Page.
More Aaron
2 more
Boone.
years, Aaron Boone.
More lack of accountability in the New York Yankees organization. Yes! Yes! It's what I love! He's got to have naked pictures of Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner. I am convinced. We'll see you all tomorrow.